Prime Minister Modi landed in China earlier today to a grand welcome and cheers by Indian diaspora in Tianjin. Prime Minister Modi's visit to China for the SCO Summit 2025 marks his first trip to China since 2019. The visit is significant for India-China diplomacy, aiming to rebuild and stabilize bilateral relations between the two countries. This visit to Tianjin is for the Shanghai Cooperation Organization Summit, a Eurasian political and security alliance that also includes Russia. Now, Modi's trip comes at a time when India's relationship with the U.S. is experiencing its most significant crisis in years, following President Donald Trump's imposition of highest tariffs among Asian countries on Indian imports for New Delhi's continued purchase of Russian oil. Now, India-China relations, which had earlier deteriorated after a military clash along the Himalayan border in 2020, are now seeing signs of thawing. All eyes will be on a possible bilateral meeting tomorrow between Modi and Chinese President Xi Jinping on sidelines of the summit. So what could be possibly discussed between the two leaders? Border de-escalation and stability. The leaders are likely to discuss progress and further measures related to de-escalation along the line of actual control in Ladakh, including patrolling arrangement and perhaps maintaining peace and tranquility at the border to avoid any future conflict. Trade and economic cooperation. Both sides are hopeful and may explore ways to enhance trade relations, secure perhaps better market access for Indian goods, and discuss Chinese investments in non-strategic sectors in India. And finally, regional security and counter-terrorism. Modi is expected to reiterate India's stance against cross-border terrorism, particularly in context of recent conflict involving Pakistan, which is also closely aligned with China. Discussions may touch upon security cooperation within the SCO framework. Those, of course, three of the many points that are likely to be discussed between the two leaders. And joining us on the show is Professor Swaran Singh from Center for International Politics, JNU. Also with us is Ambassador Deepak Vora, former Indian diplomat. Ambassador Vora, I want to come to you first. It's a significant visit of Prime Minister Modi in China. What are you hoping will come out of this visit? While, a lot of people are trying to read more to this visit, can we at this point say that this is both a shake-up of geopolitics as well as Prime Minister ensuring that India's economic interests are primary and, taken up with utmost importance?
Thank you very much, ma'am. Can you hear me?
I can hear you, sir, yes.
Thank you very much. Always a pleasure to be with you, ma'am, because you are brilliant. And the way you put it across, I enjoy that very much. Thank you. What am I expecting from this visit? Nothing. Zilch. Whatever has to be discussed has already been discussed. Ma'am, that's diplomacy. I've been there 52 years. If you think that Modi and Jinping will sit across, or whatever the fellow's name is, sit across a table and say, Acha, Tiger, bolo, ye sign karna hai, ye karna hai. No. All that has already been done by our ambassador and their fellow over here. The visit really puts the seal on what has been agreed. Now, what is our main concern with China, ma'am? The three T's, STU, the T. The first T is territory. Get the hell out of my land. The Chinese won't do it. Second is terror. Stop supporting terror in Atankistan. The Chinese will not do that. The third is trade. Buy more from me. You think they will? China has overcapacity in manufacture. He's not able to sell to Europe. They don't buy it. He's not going to sell to America. There are sanctions. Which market does that leave him with? Bhutan, Nepal, or Bharat? He wants to sell to me. And if he can't sell to me, he's going to sell to his own domestic market. This is something that you have to be very clear. He's not going to increase his imports from India. He'll say sweet things. So will his ambassador over here. Oh, we'll buy more from India. What will you buy more? Motor cars? Bicycles? Scooters? Clothes? You manufacture everything. You're the factory of the world. So this is meaningless, what we hear. Until these three T's, territory, terror, and trade, are sorted out, I don't see any breakthrough in our relationship. I'm sorry to have to pour water over wonderful people like you who are saying, oh, new chapter in India-China relations. The world will change. The world will be a better place. No, it won't. Prime Minister Narendra Modi, where did he go before going to China, ma'am? I think he went to a country called Japan. That was a bilateral visit. Why is he going to China? for a Shanghai Cooperation Organization multilateral visit. The message is clear that what is that foreign minister's name? Wangi, Mangi, whatever that chap's name is. He comes to us
Vangi,
first.
yes, yes.
Yes, and then goes off to Pakistan, saying, I prefer to have equality. A tiger too can play at that. Chanakya ki santan ko sikha raha hai. So we go first to Japan. Samajh ja, tiger, Japan is your enemy. I've gone first to him on a bilateral visit. I'm coming to you only because it's a multilateral Shanghai Cooperation Organization visit. These are the signals which we look for. I've been 52 years in diplomacy and counting. And of course, Professor Saab is far more knowledgeable than I am. Well, I've been around and I'm 74 years young. So, anybody is expecting anything earth shaking from this visit, happy birthday. It's not going to happen. There'll be all the photo ops, and Global Times will publish all kinds of things. Oh, India is there, and India is this, and India is a great nation. Till there's another clash on the border, and there's these Indians, terrible fellows, we'll do this to them, we'll do that to them. Don't believe a word of the nonsense that they do. So I rest my case by saying, what do I expect? Certainly photo opportunities.
Okay.
The fact that the Prime Minister has gone there, the focus will be on economic issues. Chinese investment in India, no thank you. Sensitive or non-sensitive, I don't know what the difference between the two is. No thank you. But what is going to happen is, at least we have sent a message to this fellow, what's his name, the American chap, McDonald Trump, that look, we have other options. And by the way, I don't even know where McDonald Trump is. If you have any idea, please tell us. One of the reports I've got is that he's in an ICU somewhere. He's very unwell. I don't know if that is true, but you'll find out. You're the brilliant source of news. So I rest my case. Don't expect too much.
All right. Don't expect too much. That's the message coming in from Ambassador. Professor Swaran Singh, would you agree? Would you agree that this perhaps is just merely a photo op, and anything that had to be discussed has been discussed already with China? This is essentially to show to the world that we are uniting and we are keeping our enemies closer to us at a time when the West is looking down on us.
I think let me begin by complimenting and agreeing with Ambassador Bora. As far as cutting the T's and dotting the I's, officials definitely have worked on it for several months, and they have done it, of course. But when it comes to giving strategic direction as to where you want bureaucrats to go in coming months and years, that is what happens when two national leaders meet face to face, sometime in closed-door meetings, sometime in delegation level conversations. And I am expecting that to happen in terms of where they wish to take that relationship. You would remember in Kazan in October last year when they met, that marked a U-turn in the relationship, and the normalization process has begun. Several initiatives are in process. They will take time to fructify. It's not an easy relationship. But from that October, now more recently, particularly last 3 months or so, Trump's tariffs and the whole tension in India-United States relationship, which of course Beijing has all the reasons to celebrate, to wean India away from United States, have accelerated that process for sure. And if you remember, India's interest in Shanghai Cooperation Organization was very little.
Right.
India was the host of Shanghai Cooperation Organization in 2023 when it ultimately ended up a short meeting online. And next year, of course, Pakistan was to host it. They hosted the Council of Heads of Government, Heads of State met in Kazakhstan. So it's a coming back of Shanghai Cooperation Organization where Russian president for the first time is able to exit his nation, join such a multilateral meeting. Indian Prime Minister is going there with entire enthusiasm and so on. So first of all, the multilateral organization called Shanghai Cooperation Organization itself is getting certain amount of energy. That's point number one. And SCO clearly sends a signal to Western nations as to how these countries can provide an alternative, can stand on their own, and they keep saying we are alternatives, we are different from Western countries, but we are not anti-Western. Number two, I think this is also going to showcase us a trilateral meeting of President Putin, President Xi Jinping, and Prime Minister Modi, rekindling again. They've met twice in June of 2018, and since then they have not met. Now they are meeting again. And now this time, China and Russia already have a no-limits partnership, and now they see India joining in that trilateral, which again is symbolic. I'm not saying world is going to change tomorrow night, but it's very symbolic. And then finally, in that context, is the bilateral, where I'm expecting at least some announcements to come from this bilateral meeting. Maybe the flights are to be resumed.
Okay.
Or if I'm, too optimistic, maybe informal summit meetings are revived. So we don't know at what level optimism will be met, but I think definitely there's going to be a positive momentum and acceleration of that positive momentum. And I think in that sense, when national leaders meet, it does make a difference to me. The bureaucracy will make sure that they are pursuing things that the national leaders want them to do, and they know it better. They know in advance what is going to happen sometimes. But national leaders meeting is sometimes very, very important event to happen with full of potential. Sometimes it can even be groundbreaking. I'm not saying this time it is going to be groundbreaking, but it can really showcase enormous change in the relationship.
Enormous change and enormous strength, at least for Beijing right now, and that's what West is looking at very, very closely. Ambassador Vohra, before we went on break, you suggested that at least much of the work is already done, and perhaps what we are going to see happening tomorrow and day after is simply photo op. But this photo op is also being essentially eyed very, very strongly by Western media. And the reason I say that, sir, is because we've heard many voices from the West, especially from the US, suggesting that what US has done, by the way of imposing penalties on India, is upended the relationship that India and US enjoyed for good 25 years. And that's the reason why we see India now cozying up to China, and it could potentially harm US's interest. Is that what this meeting means to you, sir, or is there more to it?
Ma'am, all right, let me put it differently. We are the grandchildren of a fellow called Chanakya. I'm sure you've heard his name. You've also heard them saying कि मेरे दुश्मन का दुश्मन मेरा दोस्त होता है. People talk about it. But nowhere does it say कि मेरे दोस्त का दुश्मन necessarily is my dushman. Now, I'll put it across to you like this. We have an issue with the United States. A fellow called Donald Trump has upended the bilateral relationship, built over decades. I know this, I've served there. It was really after Shri George Bush came to power, 1998, when we did our nuclear test, they imposed sanctions on us. We were hurting badly, ma'am. You are too young to remember. We issued the Resurgent India bonds. We had no foreign exchange. We got $5 billion we wanted. We got 5.2 billion. SBI, State Bank of India. Bhul jate hum log. That helped us for a period of time. And then along came 9/11, and then Shri George Bush, the senior fellow, said, oh, I love India, and all the sanctions went away, etc., etc. Now, with the difficulty, ma'am, at the moment with this fellow, 25 years we've worked hard to stabilize the relationship. And of course, it's only on trade that he's trying to play games. As far as high technology is concerned, as medicine is concerned, space is concerned, defense is concerned, we are going ahead with the United States. Donald Trump is here today. He won't be around tomorrow. India will be here forever. But he has tried his best to damage the relationship, and he is an equal opportunity offender. He does it with everybody. Now, am I going close to China because I don't like the United States? That will be cutting off my face to spite my nose. No, we don't do that kind of thing. Our relationship is never reactive. We think very carefully. Should I improve my relationship with China? Yes. Has that got to do anything in my relationship with the United States? Perhaps not. What if he hadn't put tariffs? What if Mr. Trump didn't impose tariffs? Do you think Prime Minister would have avoided the Shanghai Cooperation Organization meeting? He would have gone in any case. It has nothing to do with tariffs. So this is what I would like to say, that we take a bilateral relationship on its own. It's never reactive. Ma'am, to all the millions of people, you are outstanding. And Professor Swaran Singh is the millions of people watching your show. Yaar, bharosa karo hum pe. We are past masters in diplomacy. We understand how it's to be done. Which is, for example, the only country that spoke to both Russia and Ukraine and saying, Tiger, stop fighting. They didn't listen. That's a different matter. Now, Shri Zelensky is, I don't know, he called the Prime Minister, I just heard you say, and he said some funny things that we expect India to do something. Because that buffoon, what is his name? Bizarro, not Bizarro. वो क्या नाम है उसका जो advisor है Trump का? Navarro. So that Bizarro Navarro is, yeah, that's right. That bizarre fellow is saying, oh, the road to peace in Ukraine passes through New Delhi. Thank you very much for giving me that importance. I thought you were cursing me. Now suddenly I've become the peacemaker. And now Zelensky is saying the same thing. Man, ये क्या समझते हैं ये लोग अपने आप को? You're messing, you're trying to play games with Professor Swaran Singh. And people like him, they are our pride. They understand totally what you are up to. Do you read what I'm saying?
Right.
Because this fellow says Delhi will make peace, and now this guy Zelensky calls as if on cue, कि यार मेरी मदद करो. Come on, guys, wake up, यार. तुम कल पैदा हुए हो सर्कस के जोकर वो जो ज़ेलेंस्की है. So my feeling
So
here is, ma'am,
as cheeky and as young you are, I see you making some very valid points. India's diplomacy is never reactive. So perhaps, Prime Minister's visit to China has nothing to do with Donald Trump's tariff. I think it's a fair point. Professor Swaran Singh, it's a fair point. Would Prime Minister have visited, China for SCO meeting had Trump not imposed tariffs? Perhaps yes. Perhaps this was already in making because India is looking to better its relationship with China, and this has been long time coming now. But I have to ask you, to what extent do you think it has something to do with Trump tariffs? And if at all, do you think, Donald Trump is now going to think twice over, about the 25% penalty that he's imposed on India, because India is actively looking for partners. Let's at least agree on the fact that India is now actively looking for partners for our $60 billion worth of products, about 2/3 of our total exports to the U.S., which will be impacted as a result of that 50% penalty. So to what extent do you think perhaps the U.S. is now going to go back to the drawing room and think on whether it wants to go ahead with that heavy penalty?
If you look at the track record of President Donald Trump, I wouldn't be surprised on his going back. He's done that back and forth with several other cases. He's been putting pause, he's been raising tariffs, reducing them. All kinds of surprise elements are always there. But whether those tariffs are contributing to ensuring Prime Minister Modi's visit to China, obviously, Ambassador Bohra will vouch me when I say Prime Ministers of India, when they travel abroad, it's not just one reason that makes them go where they are going, for how many days they are going, when they are going. There are several reasons put together that make a journey like this happen. But what is significant here is the perception. I mean, I am an outsider. I will never know how much tariffs contributed to the decision that Prime Minister will go to Tianjin. But perception outside cannot be denied, correlates that there is a correlation in sudden, sort of ratcheting up of that relationship by Donald Trump vis-a-vis Prime Minister. Now we are even hearing the German newspaper authenticated by New York Times saying 4 to 5 times President Trump has been trying to reach out to speak to Prime Minister Modi, and that has not happened so far. And in that sense, it's not easy to not see the connection, at least in terms of perceptions, that this hike in tension has definitely contributed. I'm not saying this is a singular reason, but has definitely contributed. And the fact that United States and President Trump himself particularly, both in first term and now, sees China as his most formidable systemic challenge.
Right.
And if you look at one of the largest countries, largest population country, 4th largest economy, which is a friend of United States, is seen getting closer to China, it's not going to be not noticed in the United States. President Trump is going to take note of what happens tomorrow between these two leaders. Moreover, Beijing would love to see India is weaned away from the United States. And I agree with the Mr. Bohra, despite these sort of tariffs, which are going to impact about, as you mentioned, $60 billion worth of India's exports, it's a very large, wide and deep relationship in so many sectors that India shares with the United States that may not, hit the headlines right now. Headlines are made of tariff rise and Russian oil being the reason, etc., etc. But the correlation cannot be denied. The fact that they are two leaders of two largest countries, rapidly transforming, growing economies.
Right.
Right now, look at the top 4 countries, economies in the world. The 2 are the developing countries. After United States, Germany, it is China and India. So that 2 countries coming together cannot be denied. It's entire Western media which is noticing it, and entire Western media itself is underlining the link between tariff hikes because of Russian oil and the meeting that is happening tomorrow. There are definitely a million other reasons.
100%. At least by the way of perception, I believe, Ambassador, if you'll agree with me, by the way of perception, I think we've sent some sort of right message, whether Prime Minister would have visited the SCO or not. given that it's coming at a time when India is being pushed or rather pressured to bow down to US's need, India is making it very clear we're not bowing down. But, to your point of the trioca that is emerging by the way of Russia, China and India relationship, what are you making of the future of that relationship going forward? I ask this question knowing well, sir, the history that India and China have had in the past. There is a sense of fear and mistrust when it comes to our relationship with China.
The first term that you used, fear, no, not at all. We're not scared of these fellows. But what you have rightly pointed out is lack of trust. Why did Galwan happen? Give me a logical explanation. I haven't heard any. And when we had the Pahalgam attack, what did the Chinese say? Tourists were killed in Pahalgam. And when we went around the world screaming it was terrorism, China said, oh, sorry, it was a terrorist attack. And then they've been defending that revered Islamic scholar, what is that joker's name? Hafiz Saeed or whatever, who lives in Pakistan. Ma'am, we follow all this. I've worked in that racket in the United States. I understand. These statements made in the UN are very important. You provide shelter because you are scared. They are scared. I'm not. They are scared that the Tariq-e-Taliban Pakistan and what is that other thing called Baloch Liberation Army are having these chaps for breakfast, the Chinese working there. So their concern is to see how they can contain India's rise. Ma'am, आप हमसे बहुत छोटी हैं. एक जंगल के दो शेर राज नहीं करते. Does China accept India as an equal? Professor Swaran Singh will be better placed to answer that. Do they think I'm some upstart who's beginning to challenge them? That India है क्या ये भारत है? वो trade figures आप जितना मर्जी दिखाइए, ये economy उनकी, ये economy इनकी. But the reality is he will not. China has a problem of ego and anger management. Until you can handle that, ma'am, I don't see any substantial improvement in our bilateral relations. Optics honge. But deep down, my military doesn't. I've just returned from Leh. We are on high alert. You never know what these jokers will do tomorrow.
100%.
The last time when Ping Pong was here, they attacked us.
Right. So
and then we
there
had
is,
to
there is
PM
mistrust.
Kya kar rahe ho?
100%. So there is, if not fear, then mistrust. I stand corrected.
That's right.
I
no,
stand
you don't
corrected
stand corrected.
on that.
Fear
But
unki
before
taraf hai, meri taraf nahi.
But before I let you both go, Professor Swaran Singh, something that you're going to be eyeing very, very closely tomorrow, coming out perhaps of a bilateral conversation between Xi Jinping and Prime Minister Modi, what would that be? What would you be eyeing?
I think, let me first say that it is a well-known saying in diplomacy that there are no permanent friends, there are only permanent interests. And when it comes to China and India, history makes it more complicated than it appears on the face value when you see photo opportunities being used. As far as tomorrow is concerned, I think some of the statements would happen at bilateral level. Some of the understanding that arrives tomorrow will be showcased in trilateral and the Shanghai Cooperation Organization final declaration. At the bilateral, I am hoping some announcement on direct flights could be a possibility. There could be also a certain indication of early harvest, which Chinese leaders are now using as an expression to de-escalation on the border, what that implies and how that will be implemented on the ground. And I keep saying if I have to be extremely optimist, I hope that informal summit meetings between these two leaders are revived.
All right. Thank you for putting that in perspective. It's going to be a crucial two-day SCO that we're going to be watching very, very closely, even if it's just photo op. Perhaps if perception is everything, then for perception's sake, this is an extremely important meeting for India. Thank you very much, Professor Swaran Singh, Ambassador Deepak Vora, for taking time out for joining us on the show today.